So last time I saw you, it was a very different time. It was like, it seems like 3 years ago, but it was like 3 weeks ago.
It was, it really seems much longer than that. I think it's because we've been sitting inside and not being able to get outside and move around like we normally do.
So I guess take me back. Let's go back to that day. So about 3 weeks ago, I met you and I interviewed you for the podcast, and that podcast will drop. Memphis has been postponed, so we're going to see it at some point, which makes me very happy.
Right.
But at that point, when I saw you, there was still some hope that the show might happen, might go on, or at least get through the dress rehearsal.
Right.
As it became more and more real that the show was not going to go on at that time as planned, this would have been the closing night of Memphis.
Right.
What was the mood in the room? Robert was telling me he just kind of broke down crying during that last run through when the lead, I don't remember his name, when Huey sings "Memphis Lives in Me." That's very emotional.
Yeah.
So how was the mood? What was happening in that room that last day of rehearsal?
We walked in, we were all really excited about the process. I mean, it was a fast process, and Robert Hartwell was so ready for us to be there, which made the process that much greater. We kind of felt like we might get the news, but we weren't really like, oh, we're gonna get the news. So, we came in ready to rehearse as normal. And then once we got the news, you could just see the air in the room just evaporate. I mean, a lot of these people were got their equity cards from this show. So they were getting to play leads for the first time, getting to know the show of Memphis and all the great music and the story, and it just all of a sudden was taken away from everyone. As actors, we take every show, every gig that we get to heart because we know how hard it is to get these gigs, and when it's just snatched away from you, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
Now, you and Robert made your Broadway debut. Well, I don't know about you. Was it your Broadway debut too in Memphis?
It was my Broadway debut as well. Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that experience, which was, I guess, about 10 years ago now, right?
Yeah, about what year is this? 9 years ago.
9 years ago?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell this story because I want people to know just how quickly your life can change and how things can come into your life. So it was, actually, let me go back a little bit. So the first national tour was going out, and they were calling everybody in to audition for the national tour. And I was auditioning, call back, did not get it. Fast forward, May, June, about 4 months later, they were having a call for a Broadway replacement. I go in, do my thing. This is June at this point, and I'm working coat check in the middle of summer. And if anybody knows what coat check is, you're checking coat so that you can get tips and, extra money, blah, 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 blah. So I'm working coat check in the middle of June, and I get the call to come in and audition for Memphis. I go in, we have one day, we sing and act in the morning, and then we came back and danced that night. And 3 days later, I got the call that I was going to be making my Broadway debut. I didn't get the tour, but I got Broadway while I was working coat check in the middle of summer. So you just never know when your time is up.
Yeah, when it's time, when it's your time.
When it's time. So yeah, I got the call. My agent called. He said, "Hey, do you want to make your Broadway debut?" And I was like, "What? Do I want to make my Broadway debut?" I was very excited. The first person I called was my mom, of course. I called my parents first before I called anybody. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
Was this the dream? Because when you're a performer, when you're an athlete, when you have so many of these ideals growing up that
Right.
you aspire to be. It's a family dream. It's not just your dream. So, you know, what does mom say when you make that phone call and you say, "Mom, it's happening"?
Seriously, yeah. Even at the age that I am now, I'm not gonna give my age away, whatever. But every time I call my parents, it's just like the excitement of me getting my first Broadway show. Every single time that I call them and tell them I booked the show, it's just like I booked my first show. Every single time, they've always been supportive of my dream, no matter how crazy. Mom and Dad, I'm moving to Colorado in 2 weeks. Okay. Never. They just always wanted me to be happy and make sure that what I did for myself was satisfying. So, yeah.
I love that. So, in this fantastic career of yours, we talked about this. You've been in some fantastic shows. You were in the revival of Carousel with Joshua Henry. I'm obsessed with him.
Jesse Mueller. Who else was in that?
Lindsay Men.
Lindsay.
Yeah, she won.
Sorry, my brain. Yes, some brilliant people. Renee Fleming.
Yes.
I mean, standing literally 2 feet behind her while she's singing her heart out. You'll Never Walk Alone. Yeah.
And The Color Purple, and then of course Memphis, which we talked about. And you shared these stages with some, you know, Renee Fleming and some powerhouse people. Do you get starstruck?
You know, at first, yes, but then once you realize, man, you prayed for this. This is where you're supposed to be. This is what you asked for. This was your dream. So yeah, not as much anymore. No.
Okay.
No, not as much.
So you, both you and Robert, and I knew this from you because we had spoken about it. I didn't know until I spoke to Robert earlier. You both understudied the 3 principals in Memphis. So talk about that. Did you have a favorite track?
My favorite track, hands down, was Del Rey, followed closely, and I mean closely, by Gator. But Del Rey was definitely my favorite. And I have a very similar story to Robert. So I started, my first show was Tuesday, and Saturday, I got the call if I could go on for Del Rey. No rehearsal, no put in, no nothing. And me in my brain, oh, this is my first Broadway show. I can't say no. What do I? Can you do it? Yes. Hang up the phone. But man, it was a great experience. I feel like experiences like those push you and shows you exactly what you are made of, because you have no time to really think about anything. You just have to be in those moments, and you can't be doubting yourself. And I had the world's greatest cast around me, and we are still very much family to this day. Very much family to this day.
And some of them were in the North Carolina theater production with you, like
yes,
Robert,
Elizabeth Ward Land, and Robert Hartwell. Yeah, both.
That's so amazing.
My amazing booth singers.
And you also played Del Rey, so that everybody knows you were going to play Del Rey in the North Carolina theater production,
right?
Which is going to happen sometime.
Yeah, it's going to happen sometime.
Now, they just announced the Tony Awards are going to be postponed, which really makes me so sad. Did you also get to perform on the Tony Awards with Memphis?
I did not get to perform on the Tony Awards with Memphis. I came later in the run, but they actually performed twice. They performed for the Tonys when they won the Tonys, and then they were able to perform a year later because they did some kind of mentorship program or something with a bunch of kids. So the kids and the cast were able to perform again on the Tonys, but I have performed on the Tonys before.
And how was that? How's that experience? Did you perform with Carousel, or did you just?
Okay, funny story about Carousel. So let me tell you about the first two. The first two was with the revival of The Color Purple and the revival of Miss Saigon. For Carousel, we did backing tracks for the dancers, because if you saw the performance on the Tonys, Justin Peck's choreography is out of this world. So for them to be singing and to be dancing it, almost impossible. So we sang while they danced. So I like to say 2.5 times on the Tonys.
And you mentioned Justin Peck. I feel like with choreographers like him, dance on Broadway is now at a whole different level than it's ever been. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with it. I mean, you have to have every single technique that there is out there. And even if you're a singer, what we call singer, actor, strong mover, that's what the technical term we like to use, strong mover. You have to know a little bit of something, because you never know when you actually have to be thrown into some choreography. So it's best to learn as much as you can. I like to tell everybody, if you're good at singing and acting, take more dance classes. If you're great at dance, take more voice lessons, because you're going to need them, especially really as theater progresses now.
And you do have to be really a triple threat now, because when you go into these shows, you're expected to do dance, singing, acting. It's not like I guess the old days where they had a dance ensemble and the actors were, everybody has to be kind of a triple threat now.
Right. So like, say for instance, you go into Chris, you can find them on YouTube. Sorry, somebody asked a question. Like when you go into an audition or a dance call, they'll say, okay, we know everybody's at different levels of dance. So, we have market people, we have people selling flowers. And then when you get in there, the choreography is triple turn, jump down into a split cartwheel. And you're like, so where exactly is the vendor that's going to be selling the cheese and stuff? Because that's where I need to be at. but no, like you really do have to have a strong grasp on everything, the acting, singing, and dancing, or strong movement at least. Yeah.
And for those of you, Christina asked, where can we find the Tony performances? And I do think they're all archived on.
Oh yeah, you can find any Tony performance ever done on YouTube.
Yeah. And
way back.
And Memphis was filmed for, I guess, PBS. I don't know why it was initially filmed, but now it's on the Broadway HD channel.
Right. It was actually on Netflix for a while, and you can also purchase the DVD. There's a DVD for sale as well.
So when we get off, everybody's homework assignment tonight is to go and find Memphis and watch it, because it's such a joyful show. I asked Robert this, and I did ask you this when I interviewed you before, because I do think the timeline of this show is really interesting. So it started back in 2012, before it went to Broadway, or 2000.
Wait, which show?
We're talking about Memphis, not.
Oh yeah, it took Memphis, I think about 10 years before it was brought to Broadway. In 2009, it opened. October. It
opened on Broadway. So in 2009, 2010, it's a very different time in our country historically. So you know where I'm going with this one, but I asked Robert this earlier too. Does the show, I mean, back then, Barack Obama's our president. There's a lot of hope in the country.
Right.
Now, virus pandemic aside, our country it feels like a different place, at least to me. So does the show play differently as you're revisiting the show 9 years later? Does it play differently now? Are you approaching it differently now? Are you reading it differently now?
You know what? I think the story now, sadly, is more important than it was then, because the political climate now, I feel, is reversing itself slightly instead of moving forward. Not that there is less racism or more racism, I can't really say, but the fact that people are now feeling comfortable enough to blatantly show their racism and their discrimination, starting with the so-called leader of the country allowing himself to do so, which makes other people feel like they can do so. And like Robert said, there are still places in this country that are still thinking and living in the same thoughts as the 50s and 60s that truly need to see this story of love and acceptance and, you know, and just love, period. If we had more love in this country, it would be a different story. But yes, I feel like now the story is a lot more important and a lot more relevant than it was in 2009, unfortunately.
When you revisited it this time, and Robert's revisiting it this time, is the mood different? Is the tone different because our country has changed?
Yeah, I feel like
the
now
story is obviously the same, but
right. I feel like now we have a bigger responsibility, especially with the younger people growing up now who may not have had the opportunity to read or study the history of this story or the history or the importance of what this story means right now. So I feel like now we have a greater responsibility, not just for people of our age, but definitely for the younger generation, to let them know how far we've come, how much further we have to go, how important it is for them to know where they come from so they can know where they're going.
And what I love about Memphis is it doesn't really take sides. It's not preachy in taking sides.
Hey, Micah.
It's not preachy when it takes sides, but it presents the person whose journey I really love the most in this show is the mom. It is seeing her catharsis and hoping that for so many people that see the show, if they need that catharsis or if they need that journey. But that's what I love about it so much.
And that the arc of the mom story is just so important to me, because I mean that woman was a racist. I mean, I hate to say it, but she was a racist. But if she could be delivered from her ways, I mean, I know it's a story and we all want it to end perfectly with everybody being loving and caring and kind, but I feel like if people see that story, a lot of people will be changed by her story.
And the music is amazing. So
yeah.
Do you have a favorite musical moment in the show?
Okay. So the beginning of the show, Underground, when you hear that drum beating and it's like, and the trumpets blaring, and that's when I felt like I was a real dancer, because the choreography to the music, like when you can feel the music and you're not really a dancer, it'll make you feel like and think that you're dancing. So you really are dancing. So Underground would definitely be my favorite.
I love that. And I feel like there's a lot of different tonalities in the show. It's not just one sound. It's really a hybrid of sounds. So that's if people have not listened to the soundtrack yet, I put up a Spotify playlist of Memphis, and I hope you listen to it because it's so good.
Please listen to it. It really is good. It really is good.
You're doing your next project. We can't say who you're playing, but we can say what your next project is.
Yes.
Is
and for those of you who do know, please do not put it on the screen, because if you do, I will have to get you off of here.
Hold your comments. So anybody who knows who he's playing in this next show, do not say anything.
Yes.
Don't spill the beans because it hasn't been officially announced yet, but we can announce, or we can say, that you are in the MJ musical, which is kind of the highly anticipated Michael Jackson musical.
Yes.
And you guys are supposed to start previews this summer, so can you share where that is, or is it up in the air?
Honestly, I have no more information than the previews start July 6th. That's all that I know at this moment still.
And were you a big MJ, or are you a big MJ fan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, born from Gary, Indiana. And my mom was the biggest MJ fan. She had this, I remember as a kid, there was this puzzle that she had put together of Michael Jackson, and she glued that puzzle down so that it could never be taken apart. Like, that's one of my most vivid memories of my mom's love for Michael Jackson. And I have aunts on my father's side who actually went to high school, to Roosevelt High School, with some of the older Jacksons.
So when you give them the call that you're going to be in that musical, what's that call like if she had the puzzle?
Scream. I mean, but my mom screams at every show that I get, but that one, it was big. Hey, Mom. She's just not saying it out loud. But yeah, she of course, and she's always so proud. So to be doing MJ musical, being from Gary, Indiana, it's a full circle moment for sure.
So this is very interesting to me because I think there are so many young people that live outside of New York City in towns like Gary, Indiana, or in cities like Raleigh, North Carolina, that seem so far away from Broadway. So how do you make that journey from Gary, Indiana to Broadway? And what advice would you have for those people watching us saying, gosh, I'm in Raleigh and it seems like a billion miles away. So how do I get there?
Right. So I was born in Gary, Indiana. Also lived in a small town called Sioux City, Iowa. I don't know if anybody knows what Sioux City, Iowa is, but if anyone, I'm going to say this truthfully, if anyone can leave Sioux City, Iowa, and make it to New York City, anything is possible. And you just take baby steps. You do high school theater, you do community theater. I was the only Black person in a lot of the shows that I did in Sioux City, Iowa. If it wasn't me, it was one other lady named Kathy Banter, who is probably on here right now. But it was usually just me. And the even though they would do shows like Fiddler on the Roof and shows where there really were no Black people, they would cast me because they knew that I loved to do theater and that I wanted to be an actor. Into the Woods, I was one of the Rapunzel's prince. You just gotta make your own destiny, and no one else can tell you how to make that destiny but you. If you really want it, you can do it. It's 2020. There's no valid excuse as to why you can't do it. There just isn't now.
I'm going to open it up to questions. So if you have questions, put your questions in the comments. Christine saying you're the best friends. We're now all living in this ridiculous, crazy quarantine, self-isolation thing. As a dancer, as a performer, how do you stay on your game in this kind of self-isolation? No one's going to the gym, no one's, so how do you stay fit? How do you stay mentally prepared?
I will say this, in this time, the theater community, the Broadway community, the theater community at large, we've always had a pretty a close-knit family, because what we do is hard, and we lean on each other for guidance, for solace. But a lot of our peers who are personal trainers or who own gyms have been giving free classes online. So a lot of people will tune in and do those classes online. You just do your own personal workout. But a lot of people have come together on Facebook Live, Instagram Live. My friend Roger Covington has Core Rhythm Fitness. He gives free classes online Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you just have a lot of your friends who are out there showing you what to do, keep your body moving. And I give my neighbors a free concert every single day, whether they like it or not. I'm in here singing at the top of my lungs.
Oh my goodness. I would want to live in your building just to hear that. And what is the mood in New York right now? I mean, some of the starkest pictures I've seen are of Times Square, which is so full. I mean, so full of life, so full of people every time I've been there. And right now it's empty when you see these pictures. So what's the mood like?
Right. I think now, I think at first a lot of people weren't taking this thing serious. Now I think a lot of people are actually taking it serious. So when I look out my window and I don't see hundreds of people walking down the street, I'm like, man, this is really real, and it makes you step back for a moment and say, man, I hope we're okay. We're gonna be okay. So it's a little down right now, but you know, we always pull through. Through the worst of it all, we always pull through.
Somebody just asked, what's your favorite Michael Jackson ballad?
My favorite Michael Jackson, I think that Heal the World is one of my favorite. Oh man, I can't even think of the name of the song from Free Willy, but the Free Willy ballad is a really, really good one. But I love Heal the World.
How many times, here's another question, how many times did you go on for Del Rey on Broadway?
I couldn't even tell you how many times I went on for Del Rey, but it was a lot. It was a lot. There was a time when our Del Rey, because he's so magnificent, you know, had to go off and do television and film, things like that, and he was gone for I think 4 weeks. So I got to do 3 of those weeks, and Robert did 1 of those weeks. But through my whole journey there, it was way more than that. It was a lot. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
I'm just kind of rattling off the questions because they're going so fast. Which character have you played that stretched you as an actor that you really felt helped you grow as an actor?
I would have to say Curly in Oklahoma.
Ooh.
We did an all-black version of Carousel in Denver, Colorado, directed by the amazing Chris Coleman.
Of Oklahoma, you mean?
Of Oklahoma, yes, in Denver, Colorado, at the DCPA, the Denver Center of Performing Arts. And the reason it stretched me so much is because I never thought in a million years that I would be playing Curly McLean, because, you know, we have this thought of who Curly is, and, you know, realistically, Curly could have been any color, but the way it was presented was the way that it was presented. So I had to make sure that I brought Antoine to it, but I had to also make sure I was true to what the writers of the piece wanted it to be. So that definitely stretched me the most, I would say. I know a lot of people are like, what, Curly, that stretched you? Yeah, because you're not used to seeing Curly this way. So yeah, stretched me.
Another question I have for you, and we talked about this when I interviewed you, is when you make color conscious casting decisions like that, or you reimagine Oklahoma with an all black cast, quite often it changes the narrative when I've seen it. And
hey, Danielle.
and it's often changes the narrative for the better. So do you think these kinds of casting decisions, do you think these kinds of reimagining classics like Oklahoma, a lot of people criticize the classics because some of the stories, Carousel, you and I talked about, there's some problematic
Right.
situations. So how do you feel about color conscious casting? And I'll leave it there. How do you feel about that? Changing the narrative.
I feel that if you're going to make something color conscious, that you need to make sure that you are doing it for the right reason, because if you don't do it for the right reason, it shows. If you're going to put someone into a role that is not normally played by them, you have to make sure that you are truthful in the telling of that story. If you put I'm just going to go there. If you put a black man in a situation in 1865 where he's beating a white woman, has a baby by a white woman, and the whole town is just like, we're going to get you. We just got to be realistic with it. And just because you want to call something reimagined, don't just put a person of color into the role just so you can say it's reimagined. If you're going to reimagine it, truly reimagine it. Putting somebody's body in it is not reimagining it. That's what I'm going to say on that.
I love that. Well, I love that, and I agree with you. I think it can change the narrative, but it has to be an intention.
It has to be truthful, because if you're not truthful, it just there was why? Why did you do it that way? When we did Oklahoma, the reason we did it that way is because there were over 50 Black towns in Colorado and Oklahoma at that time, which means there was that. Curly was Black. Ada Wanny was Black. Ann Eller was Black. So there was absolute truth to that. So when we told that story like we meant it. And I know that our ancestors were there. I know that they were there, and they blessed that show because we told the truth unapologetically. Thank you, Chris Coleman. Thank you, DCPA. Thank you.
Well, and I'd love to see that production on Broadway. I would love to see that.
We would have loved it too. Oh, what a time it would have been. What a time it would have been.
Well, it's never say never.
Never. You're right. Never say never.
Somebody asked if you're going to put out your own music, if you're going to do a recording of your own music.
We'll see.
I love that. I feel like now I have something to look forward to. Are there other questions? I'm gonna, people are scrolling faster than I can read. So
let me see who's in here. Hey, Mel.
I think you have a big fan club with us tonight.
I do. I have a lot of people that have been amazing to me. Truly.
Anybody growing
Mac
up?
Mills, what's up? Go ahead.
Other than your mom, who I can see is really your biggest cheerleader, but other than
my dad.
Yeah. Oh, and your dad. Anybody else growing up that really was a mentor to you and really encouraged you to follow this dream?
My grandmother, my father's mother, was a playwright, and she wrote a lot of plays. And she used her grandkids, her daughters, her sons to all tell these stories. And I feel like that is truly where I got all of my talent and my skills from.
Oh, I love that. Somebody asked if you're going to do a concert. They don't have to have a record or a CD. They just want a concert.
You know what? I actually was going to be doing a concert in Sioux City, Iowa for the Sanford Center, but Sanford Community Center, which is a center that does great things for kids and their families and just the community as a whole. They were going to have a benefit to raise some money. And I was supposed to be there next week to give a concert, but this happened. So unfortunately, I was not able to do that. But New York City, hopefully in the future. I feel like when you do a concert that you should really have something to say, that you shouldn't just get up there and say, hey, watch me sing because I sing. I mean, that's also fine, but I feel like when you have a little more to say and you've lived a little bit, that makes the concert a little more interesting. And now I've lived a little bit. So
somebody asked what your funniest moment on stage at DCP is. I feel like you might be getting set up a little bit, but
oh man. So there was a time on the stage where we were singing oh God, I forgot, what is the name of the song? Farmer and the Cowman should be friends. The Farmer and the Cowman. Yeah. And the person that was supposed to be singing, I mean, we've all been there. We call it the white room, where you're on stage and you're in it, and all of a sudden, you can't remember where you are. You can't remember a word. Your mouth is dry. You don't know if you want to run off stage or if you want to stand there and just take it. But one of the characters had completely forgotten a whole verse of his song, which I was supposed to come in at the end of his verse. So what I sang made absolutely no sense at all, but we still made it work. And that was it wasn't embarrassing for me, but I felt bad for that gentleman.
I don't know. One of your friends is calling you out here and saying at the Easter dinner table scene.
Oh, is that who was that? Patrice? Patrice Covington, everybody, in the upcoming Aretha Genius on what's the name of that show? Tell me, Patrice. Send them all your stuff. Anyway, so in The Color Purple, the line was, Miss Seeley, that was a fine Easter dinner. I sat right down, loosened my belt, and eat it all over again if I could. I said, that was a fine Easter dinner. I'd eat it again. That's exactly what happened. Forgot everything I was supposed to say. I had 2 lines and couldn't say them.
Well, that's okay. We all have those moments.
Right. And then, you laugh about it for 2 or 3 days, but then you're sitting on stage anxious, like, oh man, I got to remember these words. I got to remember these words.
That's funny.
National Geographic, yes, Genius, Aretha, Patrice Covington. Make sure you watch that.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Talk to me about The Color Purple, because like Carousel, that's an all-star cast.
Right.
What was that experience like in bringing that book life in the revival?
Well, first of all, The Color Purple has been one of my favorite pieces since I was too young to even be watching The Color Purple. So when I had the opportunity to be in the revival cast under the direction of the amazing, incomparable John Doyle, it was and still is the highlight of my theatrical career. And the cast was impeccable. You could have not put together a better cast for The Color Purple. I mean, you had Jennifer Hudson, you had Danielle Brooks, who else was in there? Cynthia Erivo, Patrice Covington. I mean, you had everybody in that show, and you just could not have put together a better cast. It was spiritually fulfilling, mentally fulfilling, emotionally fulfilling. I mean, we would go into rehearsals some days and John Doyle, okay, let me tell you how John Doyle works. If you're not in that scene, you're not allowed to be in the room while he works with the actors of that scene. So when you come into the room to put the scenes together with everybody and you see what he's done with the other scenes, we were an emotional wreck the entire time, every single day in rehearsal. It was, man, I get chills thinking about it still. And I talk about it every day to this day as if I'm still in it. I feel like that old burnt out quarterback from high school that's like 30 years older now. He's like, yeah, back in 79, I threw that pass 300 yards. Whatever, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, that's how I still talk about The Color Purple, because it means that much to me. So much to me.
Do you have a dream role or dream show you'd want to be in?
You know, if I had to pick a show that was already written, I would have to say Ragtime. I still have not had the opportunity to play Coalhouse Walker Jr. And I think that's probably the last dream role that I have not played.
That would be amazing. I would like
NCT ever decides to do it.
Eric, Elizabeth, hint, hint. I'd love to see that. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Any aspirations to do anything behind the scenes, directing, choreographing, anything other than performing?
You know, directing, it's a lot. There's a lot of responsibility in directing, but I would someday like to try my hand in some kind of directing. Yeah. I would love it. I think now I've lived a little bit. I've definitely seen behind the scenes. I've seen in front of the scenes. I've seen on the side of the scenes. So, if the opportunity came, I would love to. Yeah.
And how was it reuniting with Robert for Memphis, for the NCT production of Memphis, and having him in that director role? I mean, that was your Broadway debut together, and now here you are 9 years later, and he's directing it. So how was that?
Right. If anybody knows Robert Hartwell, they know already what an exceptional human being that man is. And I've known Robert now for many, many, many years. And to be revisiting him in that space, in him in a different role, was welcoming. It was refreshing. It was an honor to be asked by him to play this role, because when there's somebody in your life that just exudes joy, exudes motivation, exudes peace, you want to surround yourself with them, and that is Robert Hartwell. And I have a story about Robert Hartwell and his greatness and his kindness and his huge heart. So when I was in Memphis, I had the opportunity to go do another show by the creators of Memphis called The Toxic Avenger by Joe DiPietro and David Brown. We were going to do, I left Memphis at this point to go do the pre-Broadway run of The Toxic Avenger. And we thought, we were coming in to do the show in the spring. Halfway into the run, wah, wah, we're not going to Broadway. So now I'm like, oh God, I just left Broadway because I thought I was doing a pre-Broadway. Now I have no Broadway. What do I do now? So Robert was in rehearsals for Nice Work If You Can Get It at this time. And the only way that I would have been able to go back to Memphis is if Robert stayed on an extra 2 weeks. He did not have to stay on these 2 weeks to allow me to come back to Memphis, because of course they wanted to hire somebody that they could get in right away. Robert was doing double duty with Memphis and Nice Work If You Can Get It. He stayed on an extra 2 weeks so that I could come back and actually take over the role that he was leaving to go do Nice Work If You Can Get It. And I am forever grateful to you for that, Robert Hartwell, forever. That's why it's also important for you to be nice to people. Could you imagine if I had not been nice to Robert and he was like, forget you, I'm out of here. But if anybody knows how hard double duty is, especially when you're doing 2 Broadway shows, you're working 8 hours on your other show, and then you come in and do the show at night for another 2.5 hours, that takes a lot on the body. So when he did that, I was forever indebted to him. Gratitude and love always.
I love that. When we talk about Memphis, I feel like there's so many life lessons in Memphis about caring for each other and showing empathy for each other and understanding so many things that we really could use right now as we're navigating this pandemic.
Right.
When people see this show, and I hope everybody will put it on their watch list and watch it while we're all in quarantine. And
yeah, please watch it. I mean, please watch it. If you have 2.5 hours, just sit down and watch it. It'll make you feel good, I promise.
It will. It will. It's a feel-good show, and the music is fantastic. But what would you want people to take away from it when they watch it, either on television or they go see it in live when it comes to North Carolina theater?
I want you to take away that it's okay to love who you love. It's okay to accept everybody where they are in life. It's okay to go after your dreams no matter how hard they are. I mean, Felicia had a dream, and she was also in a situation that hindered her from that dream. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I'm from a small town, I don't know if I can do it. Felicia had racial barriers set against her, and she made it happen. It's all about making it happen. And Huey, who is from the other side of the tracks, helped her do that. So you never know who's going to be able to help you. So, and being nice to everybody. What I think this pandemic has done is has shown that we are capable of compassion for each other. We are capable of trust for each other. If we lose any amount of that after this pandemic, I feel like there's no hope, because we've shown that we are capable and have the capacity right now to be compassionate for each other, to be loving for each other, to be forgiving, to be there for each other. So I hope people can take away that from watching Memphis.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This was amazing. I hope everybody will come and see this show when it comes out.
Please
I
do.
told you I'm supposed to come to New York in November. I come every November.
Yes, and make sure when you get here that we have a lunch date.
I would love that, and I'll be seeing the MJ musical
Yes,
by
yes,
that
yes.
time. And thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I will put a shameless plug. Another feel-good show that I love is Come From Away. And so tomorrow, the real Kevin Turf, who inspired the character of Kevin T in Come From Away, will be with me. He'll be on Facebook Live with me. So if you hop over to our RDU on Stage Facebook page, you can see our conversation. And Antoine, for those who joined us late, I'll be putting this out on a podcast, on our podcast, so people can listen to the whole thing. Thank you.
And make sure
so
you follow RDU on Stage. She is amazing. This woman loves theater so much. Please follow her. Please follow her. You're such an inspiration. Kind, beautiful energy. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. And
My
take care.
pleasure.
Stay safe. Stay
Thank
healthy.
you. You too.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
See you in November.
I'll be there.
All right. Bye-bye.